Now, when the unrest broke out in July 2021, news reporters swiftly moved in to tell the nation the unfolding events. To look back on that day and the events that followed, we are joined by Heidi Giokos in Johannesburg. Dasen Thathiah is in Durban, while Lethiwe Mdluli joins us from Mdluli. Good morning to all three of our reporters. Dasen, let me start with you. You were in Durban when news broke. Just talk us through what you experienced that day.
Well, I think it started a little bit before that, Abigail, because preceding the arrest of the former president, one could already feel that the temperature on the ground was starting to change, and there were a number of sporadic incidents that took place around the city, but also around the northern areas, and that was because at the time there was also massive support that had gathered outside the residence of the former president. And many supporters had come through to show their support, and they essentially had set up camp there during that period. So if we're talking about the week that was leading up to what then became the July unrest, there were these incidents that took place. But I think most notably for me, it was that Friday, in fact, 2 years to the day now, when there was a briefing that was being held by the police minister, Mdluli at the time, in eNCA, which is north of Durban. And I was having a conversation with one of our other colleagues that was on the ground on the day, Nkaniso, and he was saying to me that he also remembers that to be a turning point in exactly what was to become the July unrest. On that day, we were going to this press conference in eNCA, and there were reports coming through that trucks had been, or rather the truck drivers had been stopped on the off-ramp to that area in which this press briefing was meant to happen. It was a parade, really, where the police minister was showing that all of the police officers that had been deployed to KwaZulu-Natal to quell any violence had done a good job. So the police minister on the day was talking about how fantastic their work was, how there was no violence, and how everything went according to plan. But just shortly after that, when we were returning to Durban, that was when the N2 was blocked off. In fact, a group of Jacob Zuma supporters had put up a mound of sand in the middle of the road. They put in a flag with the former president's face on it, and they set fire to the road, essentially causing a massive traffic jam. And I think that for me was the turning point, and it showed us what was going to come over the following days.
Heidi, let's move over to you. You were following the story from Johannesburg, and you were on the ground as well throughout this entire development. Just talk to us about your experience throughout.
Yes, I remember it, Abigail, like it was yesterday. It was really a devastating time for our country, just seeing the devastation and the destruction that was taking place. Soweto was one of the hardest hit areas, given the malls that were looted 2 years ago, especially Dobsonville Mall, Jabulani Mall, and a number of other shopping centres, Protea Glen Mall as well. But Maponya Mall, my colleague Teddy is currently showing you, was not affected at all. And this is because the community at large here in Soweto decided to basically protect the mall and the infrastructure. We had seen, as I mentioned, destruction at a number of malls, looting taking place, and serious infrastructure damage. And this was obviously detrimental to what was going on here in Soweto, because many people obviously thereafter could not actually shop in Soweto. But I want to bring in my guest. He was one of the men, if I can call him, that were right in front of Maponya Mall, really trying to protect the mall and its infrastructure. Thanks for your time, Stix. Can you believe it's been 2 years since the July unrest, and you were also at the forefront of really trying to protect this very important infrastructure, Maponya Mall. Maybe just take us back to your experience and why you as a community decided to protect this particular mall.
Thank you for having me, Heidi. Firstly, I'd like to thank the community of Pimville, Klipspruit as a whole, and members of Soweto that actually played a part. We weren't just protecting the mall, we were protecting the infrastructure of our community, because as you know, we are a community that's very enriched with resources. We've got a university, UJ, we've got a Nike Center, we've got a golf course, we've got a mall. So if it had started with our mall, which is one of the biggest economic hubs of Soweto, that caters for 5,000 jobs, that puts food for 5,000 families. So we had to take a stand as a community to actually try protect what is left for us within our communities, because as you remember, Durban was a mess. We were all devastated. Soweto, Jabulani Mall was actually the one that actually made us to actually stand up as a community, because we have community members who work here, and ATMs around the community, infrastructure around the community was vandalized. So we wanted to protect the little that we have, so that we can protect the needs of the community, we can protect our infrastructure as a community.
I want to speak about the aftermath of the July unrest, though, because you mentioned Jabulani Mall, you mentioned Dobsonville. Those malls were really affected, completely looted out. There was nothing left there. I remember how chilling it was to see what was going on. The after effect, though, was detrimental, because you had gogos saying we have no mall to shop at in Soweto. Everything has been looted out. How important was it for you to protect, like you say, the infrastructure, but also the township economy? Because at the end of the day, you had people saying, we can't support local, we can't shop here in Soweto, we have to go out now to Eastgate or Southgate or wherever it is, because there was nothing left here.
Financially, it was hitting the community hard, because they had to commute to actually other malls. Southgate was one of the malls that were actually packed, the Glen as well, Mall of the South, and it created bad blood between other communities, because you can already imagine that Southgate Mall was already packed with a lot of community members who were shopping there. Everything was running out within a couple of days, so it really affected our community members who had to travel, because especially in this current state of affairs, whereby we do not have jobs within the communities. Financially, we're not standing strong because of we've just got a messed up economy. So it was one of the saddest things you had to see. Gogos queuing here at Maponya Mall, banks being full, your Discam, your clicks, when Gogos needed medication, they were always coming here, and the queues were crazy. And what we needed to do was now start to help out Gogos and helping up with the queues and all of that. So the aftermath was very detrimental, because even the community was fighting that we were the ones that were protecting our malls. Why are other community members coming within our malls? So you see, it created bad blood within other surrounding communities. But fortunately, because we're an understanding community, Sowetans at large, we're the ones that were actually understanding, and we tried to help the situation as best as possible. But the unfortunate situation is that our community members still are not getting jobs from your Maponya Mall services. We are not service providers. As a young person, I own a fencing business, but we're still not being called. We were not doing it for the money, but we were doing it so that we can get opportunities. But we're still not getting opportunities. It's 2 years later right now. You still don't see service providers from the community that are getting jobs from the Maponya Mall, and that is the sad reality, because now community members are now starting to get reluctant in terms of protecting their infrastructure. You've got UJ, community members are not working at UJ. You've got an infrastructure like Nike Center. We're still not getting security jobs. You've got G4S that that is contracted to protect the Nike Center. So there's a lot of underlying issues that the community is still not happy with. That why were we protecting our infrastructure if at the end of the day we are not the people that are going to be working there, that are going to be getting jobs there? So that is the unfortunate situation, and how I wish that we things can change, because we need our people to keep on protecting their infrastructure, so that they can be the ones that actually get the little financial support from these kind of infrastructures. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for your insights. We do appreciate it, Sticks, and I think very important that he highlighted the fact that the community also still needs to benefit from this township economy. We do know that we've been told many times that the township economy is the backbone to our economy, and you have community members saying, but we're not benefiting from from this. But at the end of the day, community members did try and protect, for example, Maponya Mall, but a number of other malls, unfortunately, was severely impacted, Abigail.
Heidi, we will come back to you shortly. Let's move over to Lethiwe. Lethiwe, we do know that this unrest took place 2 years ago, but we vividly remember those visuals and those images of stores being looted, malls being damaged, people running in the streets with various items in hands that they've looted from stores. We also remember the lives that were lost. Just talk us through where you were during this time and how you experienced it on the ground as a reporter.
Well, Abigail, during this time 2 years ago, I was driving home when the news broke that a lot of roads were closed in Durban due to the riots that were taking place. And unfortunately, when I was near my house, I realized that I couldn't go in or access my house because of the rioting that was taking place. Right now, I'm actually standing at Mega City, Mdluli Mega City. It's a shopping center that was severely impacted by the rioting and also the looting. We came here about 2 years ago. A few days after the rioting had taken place, a lot of shops that you're seeing on your screens were looted and they were closed. We found a lot of police vans that were protecting the mall. Luckily, the rioters did not burn it down. We do have a few shopping centers here in Durban that were burnt down during the riots as a result of the looting. And luckily for Mdluli Mega City, the rioters didn't burn it down, but a lot of shops were looted, and they were only able to come back and work and service people a few months later. But when the rioting was taking place, we were able to move around as journalists with police accompanying us around Durban. And at the time, I remember I was in Marianne Hill, I was here in Mdluli and also in KwaMashu. Those places were inaccessible. Here in Mdluli, a lot of people couldn't move around, they couldn't get out or come in due to the fact that a lot of roads were blocked. A lot of people at the time couldn't even continue on with their businesses. And that is why right now I want to bring in someone who was severely impacted, Londiwe. I want to ask her about how she was impacted by this. Londiwe, thank you so much for joining us with eNCA. Ngicela ungichazele nje ukuthi as usomabhizinisi omncane ojwayele ukusebenza la eMega City, at the time kade kwenzeka looting, I know ukuthi iyavalue imall completely. Naba affected kanjani?
Saba affected kakhulu ngoba sasingakwazi kwenza lutho nje, kwakungakwazi ungena ezitolo zazivaliwe, amabhenki ayedemejekile, futhi nothina njengoba somabhizinisi abancane sasingakwazi ukuza sizozama sizophanta sithole lo masenta amancane ngenxa yokuthi kwangekho abantu babengayo emsebenzini, akekho nje umuntu wayemsebenzini, nezikole konke kwavalwa ngoba kwakudemejeke nje yonke into ngenxa ye-looting.
Ngicela ungitshela ukuthi nanibona nje abantu ababengena la emall.
Mina nje ngingasho ngezwe nje umsindo ebusuku, ngezwe nje umsindo omkhulu emgwaqweni ngenxa yokuthi ngihlala eduze komgwaqo, ngizwa kukhona inqolo ezilokhu zidlula ngathi mangibheka ngabona ukuthi hayi kusho ukuthi ngathi mangizwa ngibuza komunye washo ukuthi hayi kuyatatshwa eMega City. Ngingazi ke vele into engangiqaqala leyo ukuthi enene kukhona into ekuthiwa ukutapa uvela uthathe mahhala esitolo. Kodwa ke ngendlela ekwenzekala ngayo azange ibe yinhle ngenxa yokuthi ngisho ukudla masilambile endlini sokhona into okushodelayo wawungakwazi ngisho ukuya esitolo uyoyithenga, noma unayo imali ekhona kwi-account wawungakwazi ukusebenzisa i-account ngesizathu ukuthi ama-account lokho namabhenki ayedemejekile.
Ungathi mhlawumbe umthelela we-looting njengoba sesadlula kuona seku2 years after i-looting, imuphi umthelela wayo?
Indlela ekusekwenzeke ngawo manje ngibone isimo sishintshe ngalendlela ukuthi ukudla ezitolo kuvele kwakhuphuka kakhulu. Ngisho ukuthi ngenxa yokuthi kwaluthwa ngalesa sikhathi kukhona ukudla kwathathwa mahhala ezitolo, ukudla kwavele konje kwakhuphuka kakhulu, zonke izinto nje zaveza khuphuka kakhulu. Ezinye zazo asakwazi thina njengosomabhizinisi amancane ukuthi sikwazi ukuthi sifinyelele kuzona ngenxa yokuthi imali i-price yayo seyinkulu kakhulu. Nathi kuye kuphoqa ukuthi ngesinye isikhathi masisi ukunyusa noma ingeshumi okubeke simama ukuthi bengidayisa ngo10 rand nginyuse leyo nto ibu11 rand.
All right, thank you so much, Sis Londiwe. Abigail, I just want to explain what Sis Londiwe is basically saying. She is saying that she was severely impacted by the looting back in 2021. As a small business owner, she couldn't come here and render services, and unfortunately, because of that, she lost out on money. She is saying that following the looting, that this impacted them so much that they had to up their prices, which of course reduced customers for them, and they've seen the rise of food items in stores as a result of the looting, and also how the economy was impacted following the unrest that took place. She is saying that they've seen a lot of change due to that, which is negative change, unfortunately. But of course today we're also going to be visiting other areas such as KwaMashu. You'd remember that a lot of people here in Durban also lost their lives due to the looting. Over 30 people lost their lives, and the most impacted area was also Phoenix. When we went there, we do understand that a lot of people were profiled at the time, and as a result they lost their lives as well. There was a commission that took place following the unrest, looking into these deaths and also investigations by the police. So it was a really, really sad time for our country.
Indeed, we do remember the lives lost during this time. Dasen, we remember those visuals from Phoenix in KZN, and a lot of people died, a lot of people were also injured, and I read a report recently stating that a lot of those injured are still waiting for some kind of assistance from government.
That's right. In fact, it's you know, we can't forget how all of that unfolded. And when I spoke to you a little while ago, I was talking to you about that precursor. But it was on that Monday that I think we really started to understand the extent of what was happening. Not just the looting, but now the violence and the loss of lives. Because on that Sunday night, in fact, that's when Durban literally was on fire and all of these shopping centers were alight. But then on that Monday, when we first entered Phoenix, that was where we found out that there'd been a few murders, and we had gone in to investigate and find out exactly what was happening. And at the time, didn't truly understand what was taking place. But on that day, it seemed like violence had really escalated. And as a result of that, there were a number of people that were killed. There were literally bodies lying on the road at that time. And the other important element that then started to unfold after that was the reality of how the city was starting to crumble. Specifically, when we went up in the air, we got a sense of what it really was like. Even though we were showing this to our viewers and we were giving them this experience through our cameras, we were also, as residents of the city, also shocked and taken aback, because this is a city that we lived in, and now we were seeing for the first time exactly what it looked like. So going from 2 weeks ago, a relatively normal situation, then we had a loss of all of these lives. We had livelihoods that were crushed. The economy was starting to break in front of us, and that was when we saw what it really looked like and the extent of the looting that was taking place. At times when we flew over, it looked like there were just ants that were crawling around these warehouses, and that's how much activity there was. There were vehicles that were blocking freeways. It looked like absolute lawlessness from where we were. You could also see at that point that the police were massively outnumbered by the numbers on the ground, and that's what really came to the fore later on. You could see that because of the numbers and because of all these simultaneous incidents taking place, there was absolutely no way that the police could have a handle on it. And then that's when communities started to come together. They started guarding their specific areas, and all of this started to escalate to a point where it became seemingly very militant. People became very protective over the areas that they lived in. They didn't know what to expect, and all of this was just in a time of huge uncertainty, which then resulted in, as you said, those deaths that we saw, and an impact to the economy, which cost millions of rand.
Yeah, millions of rands indeed. Our reporters on the ground today just reminding us of what took place during that period back in 2021. Lots of damages incurred, millions of rands lost to the GBD, and also lives lost, as we've mentioned. They're going to be talking to us throughout the day and giving us the latest updates with regards to the 2021 July unrest.